Hello, everybody. Hello, here on TECN TV. Welcome to the show. You are watching Monk BC Battling Communism. Usually we have a nice musical interlude that starts the show, but the browser would not load. So we also have folks here on Facebook Live on Trump Talk US. Welcome to the show. I want to kind of update everybody a little bit on, we're going to click over here to the comments. Do chime in. Feel free to chime in. Click the share button because Facebook, as you know, blocks me horribly. They're like literally the absolute worst when it comes to shadow banning me and other patriots who have important messages. And frankly, tonight's show is going to be about some important stuff. I've had some real life experience today in dealing with what's going on down at the detention center and with our patriots. And I want to kind of update you guys on what's happening. Hello, Carrie. Good to see you. Okay. So I spent the day, well, this morning I got up and did some interviews about the DC Detention Center. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we go forward, but I want to start with what I just spent the last few hours doing. How's it going, Pat and Jem? I spent the afternoon in the federal court for one of our patriots who has been held, who has been arrested and is currently being released actually today for being present on January 6th for January 6th charges. She was arrested earlier. She's been only for a short time, but she did have her hearing today, and we've got a chance to go down and sit in the courtroom and observe that. And here's what I got to say. This patriot actually was well prepared, and she was able to secure her release today. It was actually quite good what happened today, but it gave me the real understanding that there are a lot of patriots that are not going to be in her similar situation. Brenda, how's it going? Audrey, how's it going? There's a lot of patriots who are going to be, unfortunately, in a difficult situation. One of the things I could tell you from sitting and listening to the case. Now, I say listening because the judge was not in the court. It was a Zoom court. It wasn't that I'm to understand it was not a Zoom court yesterday. You're welcome, Connie. But today it was. The judge was not in the court, and she was not in the court either. The defendant was still in the DC Detention Center where they had her operating from Zoom on what might be the worst microphone in the history of microphones. This microphone literally constantly made weird ambient noises that sounded, I got to be honest, what it sounded like. It sounded like demons, literally moaning. That's what the microphone sounded like in between talking. And it would make that sound over this poor woman. How's it going, Kimberly? As she was addressing the judge. Now, this woman has... they tried to push this public defender on her so hard. And it's one of the things I've been hearing, not just in this situation, but in many situations. Thank you, Eva. They are really trying to get these folks to accept public defenders. And in many cases, these public defenders are very liberal-minded. They're not well-versed in the situation at hand. And they are being really pressured to take this representation. Some of the folks that are in there who have been there quite some time, they haven't even been charged. It's absurd what's happening. But once you get, what I can tell you from today's court proceedings, once you get into the court process, it doesn't get any better. In fact, it gets equally pressury. And certainly they are working very hard. The FBI is working very hard. The courts, the feds are working very hard to make this as difficult a process as possible for these individuals that have been arrested. So I can tell you that is one thing. There was like an immense amount of pressure from the judge in this situation to have this woman accept a public defender, which obviously would have been unwise for her in her situation. So, I am not an attorney and I can't advise you legally, but what I can tell you is what's happening here in the district court. And certainly, we almost weren't allowed into the courtroom to be observers, to be witnesses. It is a public hearing. These hearings are to be public, but because of COVID protocols And because of just, they're not interested in having folks sit in the court and observe what they're doing to these patriots, it became a little bit difficult. We had to wrangle them a little bit to get in past the front door to actually go and sit in a public hearing in a federal courtroom today. It took a little bit of effort to actually make that happen. We had to, show our legal muscle and such. And we were able to do that. But a lot of folks are not going to have that. And this is my concern we're having. This is my concern when it comes to our patriots who are there in the DC detention center on January 6 charges. There is no centralized legal process right now. People keep asking me, where can I donate? Where can I donate? Can I give to the attorneys? Is there a group of attorneys that are supporting these people, that are helping these folks with their legal actions? No, there is not. There is not a group of attorneys doing that yet. In fact, each of these individual defendants are basically on their own to hire an attorney, to hire representation. And as of yet, we have not any centralized, support legally for these individuals. Now, will that change? I hope so going forward, because there is a lot of folks who are going to be running up against a very banana style court, a very kangaroo style court, certainly working very hard. They're not working in your favor. They have no intention of working in your favor without you being a very well-informed and very well-educated citizen so that you know your rights. It's important to understand your rights all the way from the very beginning, because as we are seeing, and as this case has made very evident to me, they are still investigating individuals. They are still arresting individuals. They are still showing up and issuing search warrants to individuals as of today. So it's one of the reasons, you're welcome, it's one of the reasons that I have been pushing so hard for the conditions in the DC jail to be made aware of, because we have a lot of folks who are addressing the problems with the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland, and the use of these charges, the way they are abusing these charges, the way they're holding many of these individuals is utterly, utterly, utterly brutal and inappropriate, and frankly, a sincere violation of their constitutional rights and their human rights, amongst other things. Now, what concerns me is that the cases haven't stopped. If we have folks who are like, well, if we just get the people who are in there out, it'll be okay. But we're still arresting people. They're still investigating people. There are still people being processed and put into that jail as of now, right now. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, they're going to continue to put individuals in that facility. So while it would be great if we could get the Department of Justice to operate and treat our people fairly, it is going to be critical going forward to prevent any harm to these individuals. Hey, Brad, how's it going? To address these conditions in the DC detention center and to change them. That's part of the process that I've taken up my mantle. I've put that on my shoulders. We are carrying that water. We are certainly working very hard to get the word out. And here's what we've been doing. Been this morning doing some radio interviews. I was on Jeremy Harrell's, though. I want to thank Jeremy Harrell for. I'm going to answer that question in just a minute, Carrie. For having me on his show today. I want to thank Jeff Carrere from Ringside Politics for having me on his show this morning so that we can talk about these issues. It's very important we keep getting the information out so that people are aware of what's happening in the DC jail. Carrie asks, are there Antifa members there too, or just patriots? The January 6th folks that are leftist affiliated, for the most part, have been released. Now, I am to understand there are individuals, I think Horn Guy is still in there. I think there are individuals who I believe, now I can't tell you, but I believe are leftists that are still there. Why? Don't know. I do know John Sullivan not there, and he is a known Antifa. So, yes, as Kimberly says, She knows people who have been contacted by the FBI. One was just a couple weeks ago. So the process is still ongoing. And that is what I need people to understand. The conditions in this facility need to be addressed and managed, as well as the legal situations of our patriots, because we're going to continue to see more and more individuals end up on the inside of that detention center as the federal government continues to conduct this witch hunt on patriots and this false flag. As we know, as we're finding out now, the FBI had infiltrated that event and certainly was involved, or at least aware, if not intimately involved, in the creation of that event. We have questions as to why Capitol Police stood down. We have questions as to why the mayor, why the Capitol rejected National Guard security. We have questions as to the mayor's role in all of that that day. We have a lot of questions, because certainly as we're starting to get more and more information about this day, about this situation, what we are finding is more and more implication that the government was involved and that individuals are being entrapped by the FBI, by Capitol Police, by our liberal Democrat Congress, and being targeted. And the reality of the situation is they are targeting us, but they are also working very hard to find those of us who have connections up in Congress. They're not just going for us, y'all. They're going for Congress members. So they know us patriots have been very involved with some of these younger Congress people that they're very frustrated with. We've been friends with them. We've been associates. We've been fellow patriots. And that's a little bit what they're fishing for. They're trying to find somebody who texted with Marjorie Taylor Greene, or texted with Lauren Boebert, or texted with Burgess Oaks, texted with Congress folk in and on that day, so that they can arrest those individuals. That's a big part of why they continue to dig into this, because they haven't found the smoking gun that they can use, metaphorically, of course, against these individuals in Congress. So the battle will continue as we go forward. And this is why, thank you, Roseanne, for sharing. This is why we continue to push for congressional awareness on the issue. It becomes much harder and harder for the deep state in Congress, for Nancy and her little brown shirts, to operate that scheme when we have more and more individuals in Congress aware of it and engaged and involved on the issue. So as I mentioned today, I did 2 interviews, spent the day in court. I have also been in direct contact with the House Oversight Committee today, reached out to them for the 4th week in a row. This is now 4 weeks in a row that I have reached out to the House Oversight Committee, asking them if Muriel Bowser has responded to the letter that the House Oversight Committee wrote to her demanding that she address the conditions in the DC detention center. She has not addressed them. She has not responded to that letter. As of 4 weeks now, going on 5 weeks now, she has made no response to Congress. What we find very important, at least as it's going over on YouTube, what we find very important to do is to get more and more of Congress aware of this issue and upset. And on Congressman Comer's team, obviously on the team of other Congress folks that are standing up to this issue. So what we have been asking patriots to do, and understand, I know a lot of folks have Democrat Congress people. It's okay. It is certainly okay. We have asked everyone to call their congressman, senator, and inform them about the DC jail situation, ask them to get involved, to get more informed. Now, if you're calling a conservative, if you're calling one of our MAGA patriots, great. What you want to do is say, hey, we have problems in the DC jail. There are human rights abuses. You need to say those words. Human rights abuses going on the against the inmates in that jail. And there are political prisoners being held because of the January 6th incident. And we want you to get involved and be aware of what's happening in the DC detention center. That's what you need to ask them. Not everybody's going to want to talk about the insurrection, blah blah blah. Everyone's very nervous, but that's why you need to start with there are human rights violations going on. Solitary confinement lockdowns, pressure to be jabbed, to be vaccinated, lack of basic grooming services, lack of communication with family members. Folks are being woken up at all hours of the night to shower. We have some real bad conditions. When you add to that, we have individuals who have not been charged, who are being held in the DC jail for extended periods of time for reasonably modest to minor crimes, alleged crimes. This is what you need to call your congressperson. And in particular, if you have a conservative congressperson, let them know. Congressman James Comer from Kentucky and the House Oversight Committee has reached out to Muriel Bowser. Please tell them, go over to Congressman Comer's office, ask what you can do to help him get pressure on the mayor. Engage these other congresspeople. Ask them to speak out about it. Ask them to make some phone calls. As a congressperson, they have the authority to do that. They themselves can reach out to the mayor and demand what's going on. These are all things that you can suggest. Now, for folks who have Democrat or liberal congresspeople and senators, folks who ask me, Suzanne, why should I call them? They're not going to listen. I need you to call them anyway. And here's why. We need you to put them on record as rejecting any interest in addressing these human rights abuses. And that's why we're using that language. One, because it's true. Because it is a factual interpretation of what is occurring in the DC detention center. There are human rights violations going on. And we will enumerate them in just a moment. We need Democrat congressmen on record. They don't care. So when you call them up and you say, hey, I want you to look into the DC you're my congressperson. I want you to look into the DC detention center and what is going on in the detention center. It appears there are grievous human rights violations according to the Washington Post. And we want you to look into that. Mention the Washington Post. That's their buddy. That's their friend. Now, if they don't take your call, write that down. If they take your call, but they go, it's not really anything we care about, write that down. If they take your call and they go, we're going to look into it, and they don't look into it, great. Write that down. We're going to report back to each other who we've talked to, what congresspeople we've spoken to on this issue, and we're going to hold them accountable. And the congresspeople, yes, the congresspeople on the left, the Democrat congresspeople, we're going to hold them accountable as well. If you are telling me when I'm calling you and the Washington Post has listed and enumerated multiple human rights violations with very egregious concerns, we're going to discuss that in just a minute, some of those concerns, and you don't want to do anything about it, we're going to put that on record. We're going to make that known publicly. We're going to make known every congressperson and every senator who does not have an interest in this issue. And we're going to use that as leverage to make them care about this issue. So if you can do your part, that's fantastic. And, we're going to watch the rest of the show here so they're going to get even more informed and more educated on what you should be talking about when you're calling your congresspeople. And over the next several days, I'm going to be demonstrating to you, hey Tracy, how's it going? Demonstrating to you specifically, step by step, how to do this. And it's really not that hard. It goes very quickly. It's very easy. Nancy, recording the calls is fantastic. That's certainly something that is a great way to keep that information and to share that information. If you don't remember to record the call, just make sure you record their answer. And we're going to keep following up. If you've called your congressperson, make a note of that. A couple weeks later, check in. Literally 2 weeks later, call and say, hey, have you done anything? Have you looked into that? I'm going to call and I'm going to keep nagging. That repeated level of engagement with Congress will, in fact, put the kind of heat, the kind of pressure necessary to get Congress to act. It is very important to understand Congress has every authority to act in this situation. The DC Detention Center is under the oversight of Congress. All of DC, the mayor of DC herself, her own job and her right to serve in that position is by the privilege of Congress, by the acceptance of Congress. Congress allows that to continue as per the Home Rule Act. They have the authority to change all of these things. Now, that's a pretty difficult bill to get on the floor of Congress, but there's a lot that can get done in between that. There's a lot that can get done even just to censure Muriel Bowser, and that would just take but a few Congress people to put that kind of pressure on the mayor. And here's what happens when that happens. Okay? Why does that matter if we put pressure on the mayor? Why does it matter if Congress is complaining to her? Well, guess what? Muriel Bowser is buddies with Nancy Pelosi, and her name is Pauline Bowser, Bauer, who we were with today. So the Nancy does not like it if Muriel is causing her a lot of problems. This is how things get done in Congress. I have to explain it to you, but this is how it works. Nancy is not going to be very happy if everybody keeps talking to her about Muriel. If the Republicans keep talking about Muriel and they keep mentioning human rights violations, Nancy's going to be very unhappy because now the Republicans have the winning issue. You understand? It is her people. It is the Democrats and the Democrat policies that have created those conditions in the DC detention center. It is her actions on January 6th that have added those political prisoners to the detention center. I can guarantee you for free, she does not want to have to deal with a lot of attention for that. She doesn't want Republicans coming in and saying, wait a minute, you're violating human rights. Wasn't that you, Nancy? This is why, folks, I can't believe you guys fell for this. Folks later were like, oh yeah, well, Elizabeth Warren spoke out about the jail condition. She did. Do you get my point? Do you get what I'm saying? Why are they doing that? Why would Elizabeth Warren and other Democrats come out and mention anything about the DC detention center, which is controlled by Muriel Bowser? Why would they mention that? Well, because they're getting heat. Because the Washington Post came out with an article. That's why. Because she's getting attention in a very negative way. And so now they are getting phone calls. They're getting phone calls from their own folks, which is why there's no reason we can't call Democrat Congress people and issue that same concern for human rights violations. That concern puts them more on notice than anything. And as you can already see through the actions of Congress over the last week or so, it means a lot. Pressuring means a lot. And they certainly don't want us Republicans to be in the lead on this issue. So we're gonna make that happen and make them very frustrated. So I'm gonna invite all of you to reach out, call your congressman. Eva says, anytime I call Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell or my congresswoman from Kentucky, no one answers or their mail box is full. I've tried 20 different times and I have emailed with no reply. You are absolutely correct. I'm going to tell you, Eva, what's happening. They're not getting their emails. They're getting their emails weeks late right now. It is so bad how restrictive they are. But here's a pro tip. Fax. There is a site called, I believe, Free Fax Online. If you just type in fax Congress or fax senator, you will come up, this site will come up, and it is a free site. You can send that via fax. All the fax numbers are already listed for you. You just click on the congressman or senator of your choice, and you can fax them. And you can fax all of them. You don't just have to fax yours in that case. You can fax any of them and all of them in that situation. So, and then it is a free service. Your Gmail account also allows you to fax. There are several other free faxing services available online. So get that fax number or use one of the sites that already have the fax number plugged in and fax them, Eva. Fax them. Let's see what that does. It's certainly been very frustrating because, as you know, we used to be able to just go into the building, go knock door to door. So very, very, very frustrating. And yet we continue on. So a lot of progress has been made today. Certainly a lot of activity, a lot of work got done. We are continuing to get the information out to people and to patriots. And I think the story has started to get some teeth. And so I appreciate that's a lot of you guys. It's a lot of you guys sharing. It's a lot of you guys getting informed, listening, paying attention, getting that information to fellow patriots. And I appreciate you all so much for that work that you're doing. I know everyone loves to thank Stan for the work she's doing, but I couldn't do it if you guys weren't giving it any attention. Literally, if it was just me calling Congress, I'm pretty sure they just locked me up in a rubber room. Great. Jean Marie says, my congresswoman said to put in the subject line per your request, and the aide will make sure they get them. That's fantastic. A good advice in the subject line or on the fax. Put that in there. Per your request. That means they think they asked for it. And so they're going to, I asked for this. It's per my request. The aide doesn't know any better. She'll get it right to them. Do it. We must continue to get Congress informed. They are starting to get more informed. This story is starting to get some merit, some teeth, some necessary attention. We're going to do more of that. And I appreciate all of you guys. Without each and every one of us reaching out, sharing this story with folks, it would not be getting the attention it has. Understand this issue with what was going on with the human rights violations in the DC detention center. Those have been going on since March of 2020. So for that whole year, March of 2020 to April 19th of 2021, most of us were unaware entirely of the human rights violations that were going on, really for COVID protocol. And it has only been in the last month or so as well that people started to be rightly concerned, freaked out, angry that we have folks from January 6th, folks that are being arrested because of January 6th, sitting in that detention center for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. Tracy, I would be worried about the weight they've lost. I'd be worried about their mental health. It is certainly a very high pressure situation. It is certainly very abusive. There are individuals that have been beaten. There are individuals that have been physically harmed. There are individuals that have been threatened, their lives threatened. And certainly these are all things that they've reported to their lawyers when they are able to. They have made it very difficult for these folks to communicate effectively with their loved ones, but they are certainly making it possible for their potential entrapment, which is of grave concern. They are not getting, why do you say that, Suzanne? Well, here, let me explain. They're not getting their letters. They're not giving them correspondence that comes in. They're not even getting their emails that come in many cases. They are, however, able to communicate out when they're given their little tablets. Oh, we'll give you a tablet. You'll have some tablet time. Okay, but they're not getting communication back in. They're not getting their emails back in. So, and they're certainly not getting any mail whatsoever. And folks who have said, can we send them cards? Can we send them notes? They're not going to get it. They're not giving it to them. In violation of their legal rights. They are not allowing these folks adequate communication with their families or with their attorneys. That's a horrible situation we have. If you want to get a message to those folks in there, the best thing we can do is to find a family member and send it with them. And that's going to be something folks I'm going to be looking into. We're gonna try to see if we can't find some folks who do have family members there in the facility and send them messages of encouragement through their family members. That is certainly a way, and we need to be encouraging these families as well. They are suffering as well. Many of these folks, their fathers and mothers sitting in DC detention center. They can't make a paycheck when they're doing that. They cannot help raise their kids. They cannot go to their jobs. They cannot continue to participate in their lives and meet their obligations. So we have a problem. We have a big problem. Robin, I do not think the families can sue them as a group instead of hiring individual lawyers at this point because of the way the charges are being issued. They are not being issued as a group. For example, if they arrested all these folks on January 6th, that might be an easier situation to create, because they are arresting these individuals one, two at a time, all across the board, willy-nilly. It becomes much more difficult to coordinate these legal activities and the legal necessary action that these attorneys would need. So hopefully that will emerge. I'm really actually praying that something like that emerges, that we get a Lynn Wood, that we get a Mark Levin, we get somebody big to, not Mark Levin, but who's the other attorney? Anyway, that we get some big name attorneys who are passionate about this issue, that start to build up a legal fund that can be properly distributed. But right now there is none. Individual funds are the only thing that is yet to be set up. And here's the problem: GoFundMe, you cannot use GoFundMe to raise money for these individuals, because they are being charged with criminal activity. So you have to use Give, Send, Go. There's another Patriot site. If you are able to, if you have a few bucks and you come across, and we're going to share some of the legitimate ones that we have found, that is a great way to help out. If that's your way, if you like throwing money at stuff and that makes you feel better, I love it. That's what crowdfunding is for. Great. You're going to want to do that with the individual fundraiser, and you're going to do a little research. I will try to share the ones that I think are legitimate and that I've done my research on, but you're going to want to do your own research as well to make sure that you're not giving money to some grifter. As we go forward, it's going to get more and more risky to have individuals who may be benefiting off this situation in a unscrupulous manner. So let's hope that's not the case. But we know it's going to happen. And so what we can do, and this is most important, I think the absolute most important thing, we can continue to share this information with every single patriot, continue to get this story out. Let folks know we do have patriots sitting in our jail. They are being mistreated. They are being abused by the correctional officers there. They are being abused by the Department of Justice. Merrick Garland is holding them on egregiously small charges in an egregious fashion. And it's a fishing expedition, and they are continuing to go after patriots. All of those things, let people know so that they can continue to do a few things. One, obviously continue to raise awareness, continue to have these patriots, these people in their prayers. Something that's so critical to understand. Yes, we do have our patriots in that detention center, and they are being horribly mistreated, in fact, physically abused, beaten, etc. All of the inmates, all 1,500 inmates in that facility, and it's my understanding there's a few hundred of our people, maybe from 50 to 500, I don't know exactly. But the rest of those inmates are being equally mistreated. Only 30% of the DC Detention Center has been vaccinated, which means there are over 1,000 people there that have not been vaccinated and thus are being kept in solitary confinement 23 hours a day. That is the policy in DC jail as it stands, regardless of why you are there. You got arrested for January 6th. You got arrested yesterday for trying to hold up a liquor store. Same. You're in the same jail. And the policies are the same. You will be kept in solitary 23-hour-a-day lockdown if you are not vaccinated. That is what's happening. That's what's happening. And so it's egregious. It is a violation of the Nuremberg Code, which is a law based on treaties that we, the United States, have with other nations. Thus, its teeth, its merit as, in fact, enforceable code. These violations are going to have to be addressed at some point. And certainly I hope that Muriel Bowser is held accountable for her violation. Good to see you as well, Mary, for her violations in the Nuremberg Code. Eloise says, is there a double standard? BLM had a fundraiser, and aren't they considered criminals just because they have been arrested does not make them good people? Yes, there is a double standard. There is a double standard on GoFundMe. There is a double standard in all of these liberal sites. There is a double standard on how the individuals are treated in the facility. I can tell you, while we were sitting outside the DC detention center, I did overhear, I hate to say it, but it's true. It's a fact. I did overhear DC correctional officers who work in that building laughing about people who had been locked up from January 6th. From my own ears. So, it's not necessarily a very warm and positive environment. And the correctional officers, well, I'm sure many of them do their job. There are those who are obviously violating their oath egregiously. And certainly there are a number of them that do not have any concern when it comes to the patriots that are in there. They are definitely engaging in a double standard overtly. So, and frankly, y'all, I got to be fair. I'm not blaming the correctional officers directly without having met them. But what I can say is the culture that we see in the DC Detention Center, the culture we see in the DC government has not been in any way positive in regards to these individuals. And if you start, do a little Google search. I know a lot of us don't bother to look at what the left-wing media is saying anymore because it's so disgusting. But I did a little research last night on what the left-wing media is saying in regards to individuals arrested on January 6th or involved in January 6th, and they've lost their minds. They've lost their GD minds. The hateful, ridiculous things. Oh, these folks, these people who came and they waved a flag inside the Capitol, they are we all need to be scared and frightened because they could be anywhere. They were trying to stop Congress. They were, and this is what they're charged with, the attempt to obstruct congressional proceedings. Now, I don't know about you, but none of the people I knew who were in town on January 6th were there to obstruct. We were there to petition our government to operate properly. We were there to demonstrate our First Amendment rights to assemble and petition our government for a redress of grievances and to demonstrate how many patriots wanted the election to be fair and fairly certified. It was not. That was not the case. So we were not there to stop the proceedings. That was the left. The left was there to stop the proceedings. And this is what I'm going to point out. And it's always been very frustrating to me because once we have seen the Capitol be sieged, that what they told us happened, okay, the vote should not have continued. If you guys were so afraid you had to be bunker boy down into the basement of the Capitol building because Capitol Police were letting folks wander in, why did you come back and finish the vote? Why didn't you at least wait till the next day, let things cool off? Why did you come in the middle of the night, in the dark of night, while all of those people who came to DC to have their voices heard, to make their concerns about this election heard? Why would you, while they are literally, I am not kidding, locked against their will in their hotels? Did you know that? Did you know that people who are here in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, the night of January 6th, they were illegally locked in their hotels, violating fire code in several instances? It was entrapment, and it continues to be even worse entrapment. Eloise says, I work for the prison system, and believe me, those guards can take out their frustrations on the inmates. Very few good ones. And it is very frustrating because there is minimal oversight. Minimal oversight. And certainly the mayor, the Democrats in Congress are more than happy to look the other way, which is why we need to make it a matter of public record that these things are happening, so that when they look the other way, we get to go, oh, I'm sorry, did you guys look the other way while human rights abuses were occurring right here in D.C. under your fellow Democrat, Muriel Bowser? You ignored that. Nancy, you could have made a phone call and changed that in a minute. Why did you ignore it? Yeah, that is the case. Yes, the people that get out are, in fact, still being watched. They're still being intimidated. They're still being abused. They are still kept in fear. And the government has this handy little thing they like to do, which is they just pause. They just pause the case. So you don't know when it's going to be picked back up. You don't know when it's going to be re-engaged and they're going to come in and arrest you or continue the intimidation. And certainly if you don't cooperate, they can make your life very miserable. And frankly, cooperating, they can still make your life very miserable. So it is dearly, dearly, dearly concerning that what we see going on. And I have even more concerns going forward, because as the policy becomes fluid, it is very dangerous for these individuals from January 6th to be released in general population, because there are individuals who have been brainwashed, very much so, that these are traitors. And this is what the leftist media, that's why I've said to take a look at what the leftist media is saying about people involved in January 6th, because they are saying they are traitors, they are treasonous, they were trying to kill Congress people, they were trying to stop the obstruct congressional activity. And certainly that was not what I found to be the case. The only people that I saw disrupting the process were leftists, were Antifa, who were with people like John Sullivan, who had entered the building and were getting footage of their little coup, their little action, their anti-fascist action. That's what that was. It was a Antifa working very close with the FBI, working dangerously closely with the FBI. And frankly, if you don't believe us, all of us folks that say, hey, FBI is working in many cases with Antifa, I ask you to watch some of the footage in Portland. Over the recent weekend, there was a clash between our Proud Boys and Antifa. And I would ask you to watch some of that footage, because we will see Portland police have an unfortunate habit of protecting Antifa. Literally, physically protecting Antifa. And I know some folks are like, oh, they arrest Antifa. Here's the reality of the situation. They arrest them and let them go. Antifa knows the system. They do it on purpose. That's why they bring folks who are there getting your contact information if you've been arrested. They're taking pictures, because they know they're going to just go up to the court, the judge. Many of these folks are going to be let out very quickly. If not, they send that up to their handlers, who are able to get bail. But for the most part, these people are being let out without any charges even being filed. The cops are actually arresting them and then releasing them in a protective fashion. That actually protects Antifa. It doesn't harm them. If I'm not charging you with assault, if I'm not charging you with these criminal activities that I've arrested you for, and I just let you go with no charges, all I've really done is remove you and kept you safe, while the other individuals are not being kept safe. And certainly that is the problem we see in Portland. So the Portland police, just like the Berkeley police, very infiltrated. I will say this about DC Metropolitan Police Department. Not as infiltrated. A lot of our DC Metropolitan Police Department. Now, please understand that we have 17, 20, 37, we have a ridiculous number of different law enforcement agencies in the district. Okay? Correctional facilities are run by DC correctional officers. It's an entirely different branch. In fact, half a significant portion of the individuals who work there are on a private contract. It's a privatized security force there, which gives it makes it even harder for us to continue to observe and to have oversight over that. But for the most part, I would say Metropolitan Police Department, not as bad as New York. You've seen New York Police Department rounding up Jews. You've seen Portland. You've seen Seattle. You've seen there are indeed many, many, many places in which that a police department seems very compromised, unfortunately, by leftist ideology. I would say what prevents that from happening too much in Washington, D.C., two things. One, we do have a lot of military families. We do have a lot of military history in the district. And so a lot of these folks are, in fact, former military or have family members who are current military. And so that's a different attitude, certainly different attitude. Secondarily, I would say one of the things that makes it very different here than in other places is the fact that our officers are they have to work in coordination with all of these other agencies. So Metropolitan Police Department has actually been I'm kind of proud of some of the way they have handled these shutdowns. They have been very resistant to being used as Muriel Bowser's enforcers. They have not enforced mask mandates. They have not enforced lockdowns. In fact, they have given warnings to businesses who are about to be visited by the Department of Health. So I'm very proud of some of these officers that are doing that. And, it's important to understand the difference. Also, our officers were very abused during the George Floyd riots. They were put through great, egregious, and exhaustive no days off for 45, 50 days. It was nearly a month and a half, almost 2 months with no days off, 7 days a week. And these folks were getting bottle rockets and bricks and urine and everything you can possibly imagine thrown at them, physically assaulted, fireworks, explosives, anything they could do. And they were insulting these cops on the regular basis, just screaming at them the most insulting things you could imagine. So it was very frustrating. I spent a lot of time actually countering those protests when you'd have those radical BLM folks yelling in the faces of our officers. I would come and right behind them, it would piss off these little BLM people. But what are they going to do? They're not going to physically assault me. The officer's right there. He or she is going to stop that. And I would come back and right behind them say, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate your work here. We appreciate you being here, praying for you to get home to your family. We love you and appreciate you. Thank you. Don't listen to them. They're idiots. And they would get very annoyed at us. But that's what we would do. Just so that I can counter that psychological message of hate. I have never seen such hatred. National Guard 2, Tracy, you're right. I have never seen such hatred expressed openly as I have seen Antifa BLMs yell at these cops. And why do you say Antifa BLMs? Well, because they're not black folks. The most egregious things I've seen yelled in a cop's face have been my little liberal white girls. And wow, do they have some disgusting things to say to these individuals who are just there trying to keep them safe and get home safe to their families. It is disturbing, the mindset of these anti-police left. Now, I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration of communities when we have problems with policing, and that is, whether those problems be not enough policing, whether those problems be overly aggressive policing, whether they be irresponsible policing. I understand that. There's always, those are very frustrating issues, and we certainly need to address them. But I've never considered that what I would do is go and just insult every man in a uniform, every woman in a uniform, with this idea that somehow that was going to mete out some level of justice for those individuals who are doing less than an adequate or legal job. The reality of the situation is it's not the police departments that you need to yell about that. It is the police unions. It is the unions that have for many, many decades, Lori, go on to the back of the beginning of the show. I'll do a little recap before we close out, but we spent the whole day talking about it, so there's a lot of great information if you want to pop back in after the live has ended and just sort of catch up on what we've already discussed. What is so frustrating is to see how these individuals treat anyone, and just they create a label. Everyone who wears a uniform is bad. Everyone who wears this hat is a white supremacist, even if they're black. Frankly, they got issues about my great Jewish friends and patriots and Americans and citizens of the world. They've got great problems with a lot of things. They're very hateful, very angry, hateful folks. And that's one of the concerns we have with the folks that are in DC jail. Some of those liberal minds wear a correctional officer's uniform right now. So we are hoping to raise awareness as much as possible so that it makes it more and more difficult to commit these abuses. Potentially Soros paid. There's a lot of folks actually that well is very deep. That well is very deep. Yeah, and so much of the BS has nothing to do with their jobs. You're absolutely right, Tracy. And here's what's so frustrating. BLM doesn't care. Frankly, the Black Lives, the black folks in my neighborhood aren't really big fans of BLM because of exactly this behavior. Because it's become a lot of white liberals yelling. It's disgusting, actually. So sad. Now, there was something that we wanted to ask. I know there was a question. Let's see. Oh, yeah, good. We mentioned the hotels. People were a little blah, blah, blah. We talked about how they're still working to try to rope in more and more patriots. You certainly, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to advise you. You should have proper legal counsel if you find yourself in a situation where you need to answer questions from the FBI. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Don't think that when the FBI says to you, hey, if you just answer some questions, it'll be super easy and we just want to friendly ask you some questions. They're not trying to be friendly to patriots. I can tell you right now, for free, they are not trying to be useful or helpful in any way. They're not trying to be kind. They are trying to entrap you. That is what the FBI is trying to do. So do not fall into that idea that, oh, I can spend 3 hours talking to them and it's going to be okay. Because if I'm honest, if I'm forthright, they're not going to raid my home. They're not going to search my stuff, and they're not going to arrest me or detain me. And that's not the case. That is not what is happening, unfortunately. It's very concerning. Lori says, thank you for supporting our police officers there in DC. Lori, I am always proud to back our officers, particularly the many officers in the district that are just good folks. I'm not a big fan of Capitol Police right now because they serve under Nancy Pelosi. And as we know, Nancy Pelosi, not a good citizen, not a good American, and probably a traitor. Probably, definitely. You don't have to talk to the FBI or let them into your home. That is correct. Yes, the girl who the officer shot yesterday shot at her a few times before he shot her, and they're still under should have shot her. This is the problem. BLM does not care what danger an officer is in. That officer should sit there and die before they defend themselves. Now, here's what's frustrating. They're defending me. Okay? When there's a bad guy who's shooting at cops, that guy's very likely to shoot at random people. If he's shooting at cops, the bullets don't hit cops, those bullets still fly and they hit whatever's behind him. If I'm behind him, that's me. Cops are actually there. They have to stop active shooters, people with active knives, one of the reasons officers can use deadly force against someone who is trying to harm them is that individual is proven they are willing to harm people. They're hurt. They're dangerous. They're dangerous to citizens. not just the police officers. So, hey, if you're out there shooting at a cop arbitrarily, you already completely disregard for what your bullets are flying, who they're hitting, other than the people you're shooting at. Yeah, I want the officers to use whatever means necessary to take you in and prevent you from just shooting random. I don't want you shooting guns, not at officers, and certainly not at individuals who are in the crossfire, unfortunately. A lot of innocent people get hurt in the crossfire. And I don't just mean between cops and criminals. I mean criminals and criminals. That is a grave concern in Chicago, New York, Detroit, Atlanta, Baltimore. You know, little kids just doing their homework, walking home from school, sleeping in their own beds. And those bullets go through the walls, go through the glass, and kids have ended up dead from that. So this is the problem we're having. You know, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to keep criminals out on the streets. And that's why we have law enforcement, to take them off of the streets and to protect the people. The people. That's what they're here to do. Is every officer doing that? No, many of them are. Many of them are. And I support those law enforcement individuals who are, in fact, working very hard to do that. Now, that being said, we have to hold our law enforcement accountable. We have to hold the correctional facility accountable. We have to hold our federal process accountable. And right now, I know it's weird. Y'all got to be mad at my mayor, but she is a critical link in the federal detention of these individuals. So there is no other way to get to that part of the process but to go after Muriel Bowser. So I'm going to ask you guys, we're going to let TECN TV go here in just a minute, but do reach out to your Congress member. Do reach out to your senator. Let them know there are human rights violations going on in the DC detention center. As a member of Congress, they have the authority to look into this. It's called the Home Rule Act. Congress watches over the district. They have every right, every authority, and every responsibility to do something about it. So let your Congress folk know. I'm going to let these folks go over like at TECN. Thank you guys for tuning in on TECN. We'll be back again. I probably will not be doing a show today on Thursday, because we will be at an event with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. I'm very excited to get a chance to meet with Lauren Boebert and to try to get this issue into her hands directly. Do call your congressman. Do call your senator, liberal or conservative. If you take a minute, go ahead and go back to the beginning of the show. Scroll in if you don't want to watch all of it, although it's some good information. We had a very interesting day today, but I am very clear. Doesn't matter. You want to use the words human rights violations and let them know, as a congressperson, as a member of Congress, they have the authority and the responsibility to look into what's happening in Washington, D.C. It's called the Home Rule Act. Throw the act in there. Hey, it's called the Home Rule Act. They'll think you're smart. They'll think you're super smart. But certainly all of us in the district will appreciate you putting that attention on our mayor, and certainly every single human being, both patriot and just citizen. You know, folks who have ended up on the wrong side of the law, some of them criminals, some of them just, literally on the wrong side of the law, some of them innocent. All of the folks in that facility are awaiting trial. So they have not been convicted. They have not been proven to have committed any crime. And this is why the violations against their liberty and against their rights to visitation, to fresh air, to exercise, to grooming, to sleep, and to not be an experimental lab rat is egregious. We're not going to let that go unheard. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys reaching out. I appreciate you guys keeping others informed. Keep getting this story out there. Keep getting this story out there. Call Congress. Share it with other patriots. Get them to do the same. If you know of a news site that has not covered this, or a podcaster that has not talked about it, send them the information. Get them aware. Get every single person aware of what's happening right here in DC. This is not how America works. We do not torture people. We do not hold people illegally. We do not violate the Nuremberg Code and force people to be experimented upon out of threat of solitary confinement. We don't do those things. Not in America, not in my America, not in your America. So we are not going to let it stand in our America, not the America that stands under this Constitution. So that is our show for today, folks. I'm going to try to take a little bit of a rest. It's been a very long political day. I've got nothing else done, but I was happy to be able to be a part of the process and really educate myself. We're going to do a show in the next few shows. We're going to start talking about some of the very interesting information when it comes to correcting your status as a citizen and becoming a sovereign people, not a citizen, but a sovereign people. Got to watch that in action today in very interesting ways. So we're going to do a whole episode of that as I get more informed. I certainly haven't wanted to talk too much about it. I know my fellow patriot, Bobby Lawrence, has been educating a lot of people on it. And I just haven't got my head around it yet. So I didn't want to talk about it yet, but I've seen it in action today. I have seen it in action. So I know what works, and we'll see. Yeah, I'm not certain what doesn't work, but I can tell you what does. It's very impressive. So we're going to get you educated on that as well. A lot of great stuff coming up in the following shows. So do keep following, do keep sharing. I love you all. I love you all. Thank you for helping save this country with me. Couldn't do it without you. So until next time, everyone, if I don't see me Thursday, keep in mind, I'm doing some important work. Hopefully we'll be able to be back here Thursday. And if not, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, everybody, this is your girl, Suzanne Monk, battling communism. Trumping out. Take care.